And I'm like, oh.
Talking about her kids and the opportunities for her kids would go a long way.
Well, that's it. Well, I think we're live.
It says we're live. I'm going to look on my screen here. That's always my tell-to with my phone. If I can see myself on my phone, then I know that we're live. And
then it's real.
Yeah, then it's real. I don't see myself on my phone. Oh, I do. We are live. Well, hello, everyone. It is Tuesday and 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern, 1 a.m. here in Italy. And we're live. It's Facebook Live. So good to be with you again. And I'm really excited. We have my very good friend of many, many years, Dr. Pedram Shojai here today. And we're going to be talking about this latest project that he's working on. So first, a big hello to Dr. Pedram.
Great to see you. And thank you for staying up so late. Oh my goodness, 1 in the morning, I'd be asleep.
We were asleep. You know, I set the alarm to get back up again. And, you know, what I've noticed is that since we've been doing this, people come from all over the world. They're here from Sweden, and we'll do some call outs, some shout outs once they start recognizing or start saying hello. So, but Great. It's a real pleasure. And let me turn off the volume on my phone, which I always forget to do. There we go. Here we go. We've got Karen from Maine and Jocelyn from California. Karen's in Canada. Gabriella's in Peru. Hello, Gabriella. Thank you once again for being here. So that the people come from all over the world, and as they sign up, we'll just go to it. So Dr. Pedram and I go back many years, and we both have a passion for carrying a message out about health to the world. And Pedram is the master, the guru on how to structure and send out messages to large groups of people. And he met with a mutual friend of ours, a billionaire, and came up with a great idea. So Pedram, can you just tell us how the origins began for Interconnected, and then what Interconnected is?
Yeah, I mean, well, it was just, you get to a certain point where you feel selfish doing all this research for yourself. And, you know, every week I got these alerts dropping into my phone talking about this new thing in the microbiome research proves X, Y, and Z. And it's just like, you know, I got you and like, you know, a few friends where I could be like, Tom, can you, get a load of this? Like, this is unbelievable. And it just got to the point where the gap between what was being produced in the science and what people on Main Street were hearing was so vast that I started talking about that. Maybe about 3 years ago, I started talking about saying, man, we got to share this information with everybody. And then a mutual friend of ours was doing some RNA transcriptomic testing in the subject matter, and a few other people, you know, Mark Hyman and a number of other people have really been kind of starting to talk about this more. I said, you know what, that's it. I'm going to commit. Put together a camera crew of, you know, I've done several movies now and spent a year of my life going to the smartest people in the field, asking them exactly how this science of the microbiome can help normal everyday people with chronic disease and autoimmunity. Because I don't want people talking over my audience's head. I need people to understand what they can do as soon as they walk out of this. And man, did I learn a lot. It was quite the adventure.
And it was real struggle for me when you say, you know, just talk everyday language, Tom. I think we did okay with it. Hello to Nancy in Kobayashi, Japan. Thank you so much, Nancy, for being here. And Todd's in Virginia, Lynn's in Australia, Ronell's in South Africa. Thank you all for coming from around the world. It's always a pleasure to know that our voice is being carried around the globe, and very, very grateful for the opportunity to carry this message out to you. So when we started talking about the microbiome together, and the points that I was hearing from you of what some of our world-class scientists were saying were jaw-dropping. I didn't know that. And I think I know a fair amount about the gut, but that I didn't know. So Pedram put together this series as my wife Marcy and I did Betrayal, Pedram did a very similar type of structure. It's called a docu-series, where he interviewed many, many leaders in the field and then would put clips of things they'd say together to tell a story. And Pedram, can you tell us a little about the story, what your mind was doing as you were putting this together? What kind of structure to the messaging did you want to do?
It's incredibly hard to edit something this vast, but then the frame of reference really always has to be, what does this have to do with me? Right? And how does this help my pain? Because frankly, there's too much news out there, and my neck hurts, or my gut's been bothering me. And so what is the personal pain, and how does that relate to me? And so what we did is, first it's like, okay, there's this thing happening, but then we had to go all the way back and say, look, here is how baby comes into planet Earth through mom's vaginal canal. And these are the bacterial colonies. And this is what happens that primes your immune system for this thing called life on planet Earth. And this is how nature is just so smart and so brilliant in how we've evolved into this kind of coexistence, shall I say, with bacteria, viruses, nematodes, protozoa, even parasites. We are coexisting with all the life on the planet in ways that we had no idea. So the implications are so huge, we had to kind of split up and look at all of the different, types of verticals. Let's talk about heart disease. Let's talk about cancer. Let's talk about all these different areas where people are suffering, and all roads lead back to life, right? And by life, I mean the life inside your body, the life on your skin, the microscopic life that we've been negligent of because we thought that the body did what it did and bacteria were bad. And so if they got out of control, we just nuke them. Now it turns out that pretty much every function that we attribute to the human organism is actually also being produced, enzymes being produced, functional components coming out of the post-metabolome of these bacteria that have been working alongside us from day zero, if you will. And now that we understand this, everything we know about medicine has changed. I mean, it's a revolution in what we know. And, between that and some of the genetic information that we've been kind of getting through the last kind of decade of study, I mean, forget about it. Forget about it.
It's remarkable. I'm writing an article right now, and today I was writing about how the history of bacteria on the planet goes back 3.5 billion years, and the history of humans on the planet goes back 2.5 million years. So bacteria have been around and learned to survive and thrive a whole lot longer than we have. And that, it's often the story, and we were just talking before we got online here, we were talking about a friend of ours, Dr. Helen, who's in Interconnected, and Dr. Helen Messier. And Helen and I have often, after being on stage all day, when we sit around and have a glass of wine afterwards before dinner, the conversation goes usually to, are we humans with a whole lot of bacteria, or are we bacteria having a human experience? And when you do the numbers and look at how many messages are being sent out that are guiding and instructing function throughout the body, the latter is a really strong argument that we are the physical manifestation of the housing of all of the bacteria in us. And I know that's a little geeky, to be thinking about, but it really is that way. There's enough evidence of this that tells me we need to just respect our microbiome. We need to recognize that they've got a lot of control here, and our idea about the hygiene theory, which was keep the bugs off our hands, do antibacterial everything, that was wrong. That came out in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and it just was wrong. And we need these bacteria.
There's a part of this story that, if we're going to trip on the philosophical road for a little longer, if we look at the powerhouse of our cells, these little organelle inside of each cell, we have these things called mitochondria. And if you look at where mitochondria came from, they were originally a form of bacteria that somehow we started working with and incorporated in our cells. The difference between prokaryotic and eukaryotic organisms, basically the evolutionary leap that allowed us to evolve much more rapidly, was our ability to incorporate this mitochondria and be able to produce a lot more energy, which led to, just greater output. Life started moving faster. This was an early deal, very early deal, in a cellular deal that happened with mitochondria. And these guys, we are now learning, are in intimate communication with the bacteria in our microbiome. There's signaling happening between the mitochondria, or the kind of bacterial origins of where we come from in our cells, and the bacteria out of our cells. And they're telling our system, produce more energy, conserve energy, there's a danger, there's all sorts of problems. I mean, there's an ancient pathway of bacterial communication of which we're barely part, right? That's been happening behind the scenes the whole time. And I mean, I could geek out more and more. I mean, some of the stuff, like a lot, like your eyeball, turns out was likely a conglomerate of photosensitive bacteria that got together and started functioning together in a way that eventually evolved into this thing called an eyeball that eventually became an organ inside of a mammalian species. I mean, just wow. Come on, right?
That's really geeking out now. And that just opens a whole world of ideas and conversations. So yeah. Jocelyn says, thanks so much for Interconnected. Ken says, yeah, that's good, Doc, but how's Marcy? Marcy's good. Ken, thank you so much. She's right here. Marcy's in control tonight of making sure that everything runs well behind the scenes. David says, hello from Ann Arbor. Mia says, hello from North Wales. Josephine is here from Ireland. Sharon's here from Hamilton, Ontario. Gabriela Alvarez says, Interconnected was awesome. Life-saving docu-series. Keep working on that, Dr. Pedram. I take my hat off. Nice message, Gabriela. Really nice message.
Thank you. Yeah, this was a labor of love. And we did a limited screening last December. And there's a number of medical schools that want to license it for their students. And we've been in talks. And I said, look, I need to screen this one more time before this thing kind of goes off into, the signed off rights land. And so that's what starts in a couple hours.
Right. Actually, folks, it starts in a couple hours at 6 o'clock Pacific time. Is that right?
Yep.
6 o'clock Pacific. Interconnected begins again. So for those of you that have seen it, you might want to send the link here that's on your screen to your friends and family who would take benefit of it, who would learn something from this. For those of you that haven't seen it, I'd suggest you register and watch as much of it as you can. Some people get addicted once they start saying, this is so awesome, everything else is going to stop. And others say, well, I can't do it. So you know what, I'll just buy the series so that I can watch it when I want to. Whatever works for you. But it starts again in a couple of hours. So hopefully you all will have a chance to take a look at it. Hardeep says hello from Canada. Gabriella says Interconnected was awesome. I read Gabrielle's already. Mia says, love Interconnected, learned such a lot. Big hearts to you. Diane Spencer says, always learning while listening to your talks. Thank you so much, from Wisconsin. Debbie says, can you tell me how to get rid of Candida albicans? Well, now that's interesting. I would just take this opportunity with Dr. Pedram to say, what is the relationship of yeast with our microbiome?
They have a very intimate, ancient relationship, and there's a lot of to and fro. And the yeast technically are part of our microbiome. There's bacteria, and then there's yeast. There's all kinds of things in there. And really, the challenge is when one species gets out of control and starts to, overbear on the others. And so what happens is, think of like gangs of New York, right? These certain bacteria get together, and what they do is they frankly poop out this slick membrane, if you will, this biofilm. And that biofilm then creates an environment where other bacteria or other, fungus gets smothered out. Now, there's a couple strategies. One is, look, you go up, you take, I like botanicals. You can go a lot more aggressive. I mean, you go fluconazole. There's definitely things that you could do to kind of wipe out, fungus. But there are some wonderful botanicals like oregano oil. Obviously you have to have it enterically coated. There's special ways of taking it. If not, it's too much. But you can take the botanicals to bring down the colonies. But if you're still feeding them the sugars, you're going to continue to have a war in your gut. So the strategy really becomes just starve out what they thrive on, which is the sugars, have more fiber, have more vegetables, and start to shift the colony balance over to a healthy, more kind of bacterial-oriented microbiome. And there are, a number of strategies there. I mean, I don't want to give medical advice online. There's, very specific things for very specific, cases here. But in general, starve out what is in overabundance. Take certain botanicals that can bring those down, and then bring up your good friends, right? And then feed your good friends. What you really want to do strategically is feed yourself what your happiest bacteria need to eat. And then those bacteria will make you happy and you will continue to thrive.
For those of you who have been following for a while, you heard Dr. Pedram say fiber and vegetables as critical components. And you know that fibers feed bacteria. Fibers don't feed yeast so much, they feed bacteria. And by alternating your fibers, that's why you hear us say that the have a different root vegetable every day. One root vegetable and 2 other prebiotics. Just go to Google and type in list of prebiotic foods, and have at least 1 root vegetable every day, altering them: rutabaga, turnip, parsnip, sweet potato, carrots, altering, because every root vegetable, the fibers of different root vegetables feed different families of good bacteria. And so you want to be altering your feeding, the food that you're giving, so that all of the good bacteria are developing more, and they will crowd out the bad bacteria. They'll crowd out the yeast or the fungi that are growing. That's a component of treating an excessive yeast infection.
That's also just to kind of add to that. A lot of people will take that advice tonight and then wake up in the morning saying, I'm not feeling much better. Right. And so, right. And so, just know that it took a while to get into the predicament that we're in individually. And it might take 3 days, 5 days, 5 weeks to undo some of this, as the influence of bacteria, the half-life of some of these bacteria pass, and then the new ones kind of take seed. Think of it like gardening. Right? I'm not going to go take a tomato seed, drop it in the soil, and be pissed off that I don't have tomatoes for dinner tonight. But 3 months from now, I'm going to have an amazing abundance of tomatoes for my salad, right? If you think of it in a gardening context, then you become patient, and then you're running on nature's speed instead of society's crazy speed.
That's really a good visual to be looking at this. Kristen asked a really interesting question. She said, a lot of doctors say we are 10 to 1 in bacteria than human cells, but I recently learned that's false and based from a study in the early 70s. What's the story here? So you've interviewed a lot of the world experts, and I'm sure that topic has come up.
And the line has moved a few times. I mean, it used to be 100 to 1, right? And then they moved it to 10 to 1. And they've been kind of going back and forth on this number. Frankly, I don't know where they landed on this week. We know that we are definitely outnumbered. Right. And the way they've been doing these assays has been challenging, right? Because are we looking at DNA? Are we looking at active RNA? Are we looking at, bacterial species that have come and gone, or the ones that are actually alive and expressive? And so there's a lot of ways to count this thing. And I think that's where the argument is. To me, the number doesn't matter as much as saying we are surrounded by genetic information. And this genetic information is just programming. And so a lot of times, like, people will say, well, you take these probiotics and, they're not going to stick, right? Because what happens is these bacteria die in a day or two. So I could take like a 10 billion bolus of certain, really expensive probiotic, and then expect that to just be with me in 3 days from now. That's not necessarily the case. What I'm buying is the transfer of that genetic information that is now coding for a new ecosystem in my body. And the more information I continually, it's almost like your subconscious mind. You keep telling yourself something, it's going to stick, right? The more information I keep kind of coding in that direction, the more that influence becomes the new normal, right? And so we're learning a lot, and we're learning that a lot of these kind of early assumptions were slightly off, but philosophically in principle, it's still spot on. We are outnumbered. Now, the number in question, I'm going to leave that to the experts, right? I'm the guy that went and made the film. These people are still arguing this themselves.
Got it. Jocelyn says hello to Marzi. Dorothy says hi from Michigan. Simi says hello from Boston. Love the interconnected docu-series. Amazing and so informative. Thank you. Now, here's a real geeky question. Did you have any of your experts that you interviewed all over the world talk about horizontal gene transfer of probiotics? Yeah.
A lot. And so whether it comes from aberrant bad colonies or good colonies or somewhere in between, turns out that these things that we kind of assume are finite, like the wall of a cell, the wall of another cell. I mean, there's just so much communication in gene transfer, and a lot of arguments, evolutionary arguments, to say that's how we started to really evolve. Is just these bacteria provided this enormous database of gene sequences and opportunities to be like, hey, I just found a way to do that better. Boom, boom, boom. We take it from the bacteria because genetically it takes so long for us to do this through adaptation that some of the quantum leaps are now being kind of purported to come from some of this bacterial transfer instead of the kind of linear transfer of our DNA, which is fascinating in its implications, right?
You know, I talked to my friend in Orange County, California, and I'm here in Riva del Garda, Italy, and we're not connected to each other, but we are connected, and we're exchanging information. Our bacteria do the same thing, that the gene transfer of information occurs, and there's a concern in taking probiotics that gene transfer, we're using probiotics hopefully to supply more good bacteria to protect us. But if some of the commercial probiotics we're using are not ideal for us, their gene transfer into the bacteria of our gut may not be as ideal for us as we'd like.
You know, what's funny is everyone's like, okay, so what probiotic do I take?
Right.
That's not the answer. I spent a year of my life talking to the smartest people in the field. That's not the answer. We've been so trained to consume products and just take a pill for an ill that we are now, and if you look at the probiotic manufacturer, I mean, there's some ethical people doing great things, but it is wild, wild west. There's just a bunch of monkeys slinging theories out there, you know, replicating bugs and say, take this, it's good for you. Man, I mean, the answer is in diet. The answer is in lifestyle. The answer is in what you're doing every single day, as Dr. Tom calls base hits, right? It's not in saying, okay, great, what's the Hail Mary pill that I need to go to Whole Foods to get that's going to solve all of my problems? That paradigm is not just even questionable. It's been fundamentally proven wrong. Right. And we still live that way because we've been trained to think that way, right?
Right. Fully agreed. Dawn says hello from Japan. Manuela says hi from Sydney, Australia. Great job, Dr. Pedram and Dr. Tom. Great work. So Annie says hi from Ontario. Kelly's in Indiana. Gary Clemens says, are you talking about essential oil of oregano or oregano oil?
Oregano oil, you could take the essential oil, but you have to encapsulate it. So what you want is the bromines. Let me make sure I don't misspeak here, right? So you want to have the alkaloids like Coptis or Huanglian. So these alkaloids will help kind of kill certain bacteria, and then also, you know, the oregano oil has kind of like the bromine mix, and so those together tend to do very well for kind of multi-spectrum, knocking out aberrant bacteria and yeast. Will it work for everybody? No, right? There are ways. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, you know, I say something and then people all go run off to the store and buy it.
Right.
and it's dangerous, right? You got to think about what you need for yourself, and then you make those adjustments in your life. But yeah, so oregano oil, if it's a concentrated oil like the essential oil, they'll put it in, they'll encapsulate it. If you take regular oregano oil, that's not the essential oil, it's just different dosing, but I mean, it's the same plant, right? So it's still oils coming from the same plant.
Here's a couple of questions that came up. One of them I thought of to ask you. You've spent a year of your life doing a deep dive in this with the smartest people that you could find, and you are meticulous at turning rocks over to find whatever you're looking for. After all of that, putting together Interconnected, how have you changed your family lifestyle for you and your children?
Great question. Great question. You know, I got a lot of, it's funny as I'm holding this. So this thing says Pellegrino. Last time I was sitting about, I don't know, a few miles from where you were sitting, we were in a house that was across from a church that Saint Pellegrini had stayed in. And that's what it was. It was literally on the hill looking at the same lake that you're sitting at right now. Yeah. And the lifestyle of knowing where your food comes from, and picking your food and sitting there and the quality of the ingredients. I mean, those guys didn't even they don't use the word organic. Like, why would they have processed anything? And so the old world lifestyle of having, soil that's healthy and having an ecology that provides for the food and the root nodules of the food, all these things that we just kind of forgot about as we industrialized our food production. That's really the answer. And I knew it all along, but it just reinforced it to the point where, we eat organic and obviously, try to avoid all the kind of petrochemicals and the toxins. Like, you notice this is glass, not plastic. And, just some of the things that we know can be upstream issues for the microbiome, right? You can't pollute a pond and keep putting fish into it. And so all of that, but then I'm giving my kids have sauerkraut at least once a day. I'm giving them a ferment and I'm giving a prebiotic pretty much with every meal. They eat carrots, they just eat things that normal kids can't. And you're like, well, how does your kid eat that? It's like, well, you get them to eat it a little by little, then they develop the bacteria that helps them metabolize it and break it down, then they come to like it. Why does my kid like broccoli and yours doesn't? Is because I've fed my kid broccoli at an early age and supported the microbiome in my kid, so now they could actually metabolize and enjoy broccoli. And so, man, it's a long road to hoe, but the consequence if you do it the other way is childhood obesity, diabetes, and what have you. I mean, what choice do I have?
Diseases. Right. Yeah, right. Lots of autoimmune diseases.
Oh yeah.
And Karen brings up a good question. What about viruses? Apparently I have 3 viruses in my gut. Are they good? Are they bad? Is there a way to get rid of them? That's really a great question, Karen, and it's worded so well because it represents exactly what we thought about bacteria back in the 60s and 70s. Bacteria, you got to kill it. You got to get rid of it. Give me antibacterial soaps. Give me antibacterial everything. Give me Mr. Clean. Wipe your house down with chlorine. All those things. You kind of look like Mr. Clean.
I do. This is fresh. I shaved for you.
Yeah, thanks. Looks really good.
One of the most exciting parts of this, Karen, and it's so new that we're just starting to kind of break some of this news out to our audience, is this area of phages. And the fact that we're now realizing that, everyone's like, oh, what probiotics do I take? What bacteria do I take? It turns out that the gene transfer through virus is so much more effective. Viruses are just like genetic transfer machines. And there are viruses out there that are incredible for your health. We're just starting to understand. You have millions and millions of viruses in a single drop of seawater that will balance out your microbiome better than most things that you can do kind of commercially. And so it's, to Tom's point, you can't just say, okay, these are good, these are bad. That kind of binary duality of our reality is now being really shifted by saying, okay, what about wolves? Are wolves good or bad? Wolves are wolves, right? And wolves have a very specific function in an ecosystem, and out of control, wolves can be bad. But when the wolves aren't there, then the antelope overrun, the rivers and change the riverbanks and kill the fauna and all sorts of things that we've seen in ecological models. And so we're now learning, and this is, to me, it's great. A lot of the top researchers in this field of microbiome happen to be women. These kind of holistically, ecologically minded brains that are like going, oh, well, if we bring balance to this, like what else can I chop into this salad to make it the perfect salad? And then, the little scallion was perfect, and that's the virus in this thing, right? And so in balance, we're finding that viruses are a very big part of this symphony, and we cannot factor them out of the overall health equation. Are there certain ones that are out of control? Absolutely, right? Like anything else in life.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's not about getting rid of viruses. It's going to be more and more, how do we bring balance to our viral load? And that is a field that's just beginning to be talked about. We're still learning how to bring balance to our bacterial load. So, Karen, you have many more than 3 viruses in your gut. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of viruses in our guts for all of us, So if there is a dominance, or if there's one that's been tested and identified for you, that you have too much of one particular virus, the first thing I would want to do is balance your microbiome as best as you can with the tools that you're learning in Interconnected, in my book, The Autoimmune Fix, in everything that you're being exposed to. Learn how to balance your microbiome as best you can, because that's the reservoir. The microbiome is not just your bacteria. There are many, many different species in there, and many different types of life force in our guts, including viruses. So viruses are not bad. Bad viruses are bad.
Well, and what happens in neighborhoods where things go wrong is you have a proclivity towards more and more bad until someone says it's a bad neighborhood. But you start putting good neighbors in between some of these houses, and they keep an eye on these kids. These are just kids, right? And so all of the different players in the neighborhood are part of either a good neighborhood or a distorted one. And so if you look at it ecologically, it's like, this good and bad thing is starting to really fall apart. Even E. coli is supposed to be there in a certain balance, right? Having too much aberrant E. coli makes us really sick and could kill us. But we're finding that a certain amount of E. coli or H. pylori, right? It's like, oh, H. pylori, let's nuke it. No, it's supposed to be there. There's just a little too much H. pylori signal happening right now, right? And it becomes this, multi-trillion-dollar industry, unfortunately.
Gabrielle is asking a question. Is it okay for the microbiome to take brewer yeast in order to gain muscle mass? I know that in Dr. Tom's words, the microbiome is the game changer, so I really want to take care of it as much as possible, mainly after taking many antibiotics 2 years ago and ended up with leaky gut. Thanks for your answer.
So the question really is it okay for Gabrielle, right? So brewer yeast is a type of yeast, right? So is there already a proclivity of fungus, of other kinds of yeast? So the way I want you to think about this, Gabrielle, is what would the addition of this type, like this piece on a chess piece, right? Like what would the addition of this do to the overall balance in the ecology of your system? Now, the answer might be, go do some sophisticated gut testing and have a more educated guess on this, which is obviously, great advice if you want to spend the money. Or why don't you take some brewer yeast and look at the consistency of your stool, look at your energy level, look at your complexion, look at, all of the other things that would be impacting it and being like, how do I feel now, right? How do I feel? What else is going on? Did the rash go away? Did the headaches go away? And so there are ways to kind of subtly, get a sense of what your body is asking for and liking and feeling those out. Or, like I did this like comprehensive test with Biome, and then Helen Messier did like a 2-hour, deep dive with me. And it was like, oh, wow, I have this and I have this. And, I was eating too much meat, and I was having vegetables in airports or wherever that were containing certain viruses that you're finding on non-organic produce, right? And so you can get that granular, and then you start to find interventions that are more specific for you. So I don't know the answer to that, but you're going to find that out for yourself, right? And I don't think there's a single doctor that can definitively say, yes, brewer's yeast for you, right? We're just not there yet.
Right. It's let's elaborate a little on what you just referenced. Tell us what you learned about viruses in non-organic produce.
It's unbelievable, man. I mean, the world is very different. and there are vectors of viruses that are overwhelming the soil in kind of traditional agricultural models. There are pesticides that are creating, mycotoxins and all sorts of things that are now becoming kind of, profoundly impactful to our bodies and our, internal chemistry, especially specifically neurotransmitter synthesis, when they impact our microbiome. And so, man, it's just the chain of custody, right? I love nature. Nature's been around before we've been around. Nature has this innate intelligence and genius that somehow has created this kind of symphony of balance, right? And then the more steps we take removed from nature in our agricultural process, in our farming, in our shipping, and all these different things, we're finding kind of breaks in that chain of custody where the balance of life starts to just get distorted. Now, can we all go live on a little house in the prairie? No. But can we choose to go upstream in the supply chain and meet our farmer at the farmer's market, or know where our produce is coming from? And just, if we know that it's been kind of non-organically processed, then how do we clean it? How do we mitigate the risk? That's the world we live in. I don't make the rules, but now, I got to deal with the same thing you got to deal with, right? Which is, man, can I trust where this thing came from? Who produced it? What kind of soil did they produce it in? What did they spray on it? And what's that going to do to my body?
And you bring up a really good point there, that almost all of us, for some it's going to be a nuisance and it's going to be hard to find, but almost all of us can take the time to find better sources for our food. That wherever you live, just look in your area, just Google organic farms in my area, and you may have to drive for 20 or 30 minutes to find someone that has organic chickens and they've got eggs available. You may have to look around. It may take you 6 months. At 1 hour a week or every couple of weeks, you're going to spend an hour. You remember my premise in the book is just 1 hour a week, but every week. And you may allocate one of those sessions every month to just looking for better sources of food for you and your family. Then once you find them, you go try this stuff, and all of a sudden your kids love broccoli and they didn't before because it tastes different. Then it's not a big deal that once a week you're going to drive that 20, 30 minutes or an hour out to a farm, or you and your girlfriend are going to take the kids and you're going to make a day adventure out there on a Saturday to get all your produce, or you're going to share the cost with 2 or 3 other families. You're going to buy a cow, and that cow is going to be raised, and your kids will go out and see the cow in the pasture. You're going to call it Hamburger. That's the name of the cow, so that the kids know that that's going to be our hamburger someday, right? And you follow the cycle of life, that the whole world can change as you allocate 1 hour a week to the priority of what Pedram is saying about the quality of your food. It may take you 6 months, it may take you a year. Who cares how long it takes, as long as you're moving in that right direction, right?
Yep. And look, it's very easy, especially in the world you and I live in, with our audiences, and being a lot more educated about this stuff, to get very orthorexic about all this and be like, the world's a dumpster fire. Everything I touch is going to give me cancer. What do I do? What do I do? And that panic, that stress level, can also be toxic, right? So do the best you can. Buy insurance. And by insurance, I don't mean health insurance. I mean, eat fermented foods, work with the bacteria that have been around since time immemorial that help us mitigate this risk and kind of offset some of this damage. And you'll find that nature is actually pretty forgiving, right? You'll find that the body will be very happy with just these incremental steps. And then, you'll move in the right direction, but it's not going to happen overnight. And look, I just bought a house up in the mountains and I moved away from all of it. And they're putting up a 5G tower within, a mile of the house. And I'm like, great. Now I got microwaves, right? And it's just, you can't run and hide from all of it. Yeah. You just have to build, there's 2 things, like, either I got to run away and crawl into a hole, or I have to build up the resilience and the vitality of my body so that I have a force field, right? And you can't live without a force field in this world. You can't run from it all.
Your answer just now is great for Dawn. Dawn's question is, I eat a paleo diet. I take digestive enzymes, glutamine, probiotics, ACV pills. I drink plenty of water, actually a gallon a day. I still have issues going to the bathroom. What is going on? It's a really good question, Dawn. Don't know the answer of what's going on for you. However, what Pedram is saying here makes a whole lot of sense. You know, let's look at the quality of all this, the quality of the foods. Are you doing fermented vegetables on a regular basis? Those are just a couple of things that might help.
Well, and think about what paleo is now and what paleo used to be. I did several weeks of wilderness survival in the African bush back in the day when I was making one of my previous films. And I'll tell you, you know, it's not like it's bacon every morning, right? You're eating a lot of fibrous roots and tubers and just, you know, very, very non-sugary vegetables that do not spike your glycemic index, and the fiber is just constantly moving. You're getting a lot of bacteria with it, and you know you're eating it with the soil, and it's basically shifting the dynamics. Now, you know, most people, and I'm not accusing you of this because I don't know you, but most people who go paleo are still emphasizing the protein far more than the vegetables and the fiber. And if I hear I'm having trouble going to the toilet, the first thing I'm going to do is up the fiber and watch how much of the protein is in that kind of dynamic mix, and then look at how to make interventions and adjustments from there. But I mean, most people are not getting enough fiber. It sounds like you're getting enough water, but just that fiber intake and then the movement and all the things that go with it. It's, you know, again, it's very specific. It's very personalized, but that's where I would go first.
That's a really good start. I fully agree with that. Mark says, is the allopathic community starting to accept microbiome science as valid for disease prevention and reversal? Well, Mark, I think as Pedram said a little bit earlier, med schools are approaching him to air intervention to all of their students. So you bet there's a lot more interest now. There's just way too much science to have their heads buried in the sand on this any longer.
Yeah, and I have the, you know, top researchers in most of the allopathic institutions in the series. And I can tell you that the immunology departments at many of these medical schools are now shifting to study the microbiome because they've realized that you can't even understand human immunity without understanding this microbiome science. Everything has changed. The problem, though, and to your point, is your average doctor on the street is going to not implement this for 17 years. That's how slow this stuff disseminates into a doctor's office. And so if they're on the big pharma algorithm and if X, then this drug, they are just not up with the times. And in my assessment, their ignorance is malpractice, right? There is way too much science supporting what has been said by, you know, not just the experts in my series, but I mean, this thing is just blowing past everything we've known. So if your doctor is poo-pooing it, you've just got the wrong doctor.
Agreed. Alita says, Naomi, my 2.5-year-old and I are late, but we're here. Hi, Dr. Tom and Dr. Shojai. Hi, Naomi. Hi, honey. Nice to see you.
Hi, Naomi.
And we're talking about eating more vegetables and how good vegetables are to make you strong and makes your brain strong. So make sure that you guys eat lots of vegetables, really important. Carmelina says, would fermented oats be acceptable to eat as a prebiotic?
Tom, I mean, I don't like oats because of the cross-contamination. Oats are just a very challenging food for me and my patients over the years. I think there's a lot of, I mean, just ferment vegetables, not grains, is usually my thing. Even like, you know, people who try it, they end up in trouble.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. Oats are the primary food that's cross-contaminated. You know, a paper came out in the journal Gastroenterology, which is the premier journal in the English-speaking language for gut issues. And this came out in March of this year. And they did 5,624 tests. They went into restaurants and ordered from the gluten-free menu 5,624 times. There were 800 people that did this. They took the equipment, they went into restaurants, ordered gluten-free food. 32% of everything on a gluten-free menu was not gluten-free. 1 out of 3, 32%. For the gluten-free pizzas, 54% of them were not gluten-free. For the gluten-free pastas, 52% of them were not gluten-free. That's all over the world. So the idea of contamination is high, and the food that is most contaminated that I've seen in all the literature is oats. So if you have a source of oats that you are confident are gluten-free, having some fermented oats on occasion as part of a fermenting source of fermented foods in the diet, it's not a bad idea. That can be helpful, but no one eats fermented. What ancestors ever ate fermented oats every day? It didn't happen. But if you had it on occasion, okay. It's like Pedram said, his kids have sauerkraut, and our recommendation is that you alternate the different fermented vegetables that you're doing. So there's 5 different types in your refrigerator: sauerkraut, kimchi, miso, fermented beets, curry flavored. And every day you do a different one. So you're inoculating different families of the good bacteria in your gut with the fermented vegetables that you're eating. But in answer to the question, if you are confident that these are gluten-free oats, if you're really confident, then okay, on occasion, I think it would be fine to have some gluten-free fermented oats. Grace says hello from Argentina. Thanks, Grace. Let's see. Janice says hello from Indiana. Rita says hello from Toronto. I love listening to both of you. I bought the series in December, and everyone needs this to become more educated. I've changed my life and my family's life. So for any of you that have not registered for Interconnected, the link is right there on your screen. Sign up. It starts in about 3 or 4 hours, and it goes for how many days, Pedram?
It starts in just over an hour, actually, and it goes for 9 days. There's 9 episodes. It'll be a free screening for those 9 days. Each episode, you have 24 hours to view. And, I got to say, I've done a number of films. I've done a number of projects. Nothing has gotten me feedback like this. I mean, just like the last comment that we heard, is just like, wow, I watched that, went and changed my life and changed the life of my kids, and now everyone's thriving. Thank you. I mean, if that's not why I got into healthcare, then I don't know what is, right? Because I could not make that kind of impact on the interventional level when I was running my clinics.
Yeah.
Right. I had to swim upstream and get into education. That's what we're doing here, is like teach people how to not need the drugs.
Teach people how to fish. Right. It's like, teach people how to fish. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that's just, thank you. Thank you for the feedback there, because that just makes it all worth it for me.
Yeah, and this person's name, I don't know how to pronounce it, G-U-O-R-U-N, Gorjan, Lilja, and I won't even try the last name, says, hello from Iceland. Hello, thank you so much for being here. That's really great. Mia says, any advice on getting rid of a sinus problem that's been going on for 2 months after a cold? Been drinking ACV in hot water with lemon juice, think it may be helping. Anything else I can do?
Remarkably, wipe out the fungus.
Yeah.
A lot of sinus infections we're finding, especially ear infections, are kind of residual yeast and fungus in the system. And so, bring down all the sugars. Obviously, don't feed them, and then take some antifungal, like we were talking about. I don't like making product recommendations, but oregano oil and coptis and a few of these other things will really help with that. And you could Google it. There's a bunch of research that we've done on this, and I didn't believe it because I grew up with ear infections, right? And they'd put me on amoxicillin, and then I'd get another ear infection, and it was just a microbiome issue. And once we kind of found that and rebalanced it and kind of killed off the candida or the fungus that had kind of learned to thrive after the amoxicillin bombs, knock wood, I don't get them anymore.
Yeah. I opened my practice on Valentine's Day in 1980. And it was shortly after opening the practice that I found this article on recurrent ear infections, and that over 90% of them, I think it was 92% of recurrent ear infections are fungal. They're not bacterial. So antibiotics never work on fungi. They can't work on fungi. So that's
they actually make it worse.
Yeah. So that's a really good recommendation to approach it from a fungal perspective. And what I've used since 1980, we still use it all the time. It's on our website. It's the Biocidin Trilogy. And these herbs include oil of oregano in them and 11 other herbs in their formulas. And it's all on our site that you can see how to use it. It's there. The other thing for recurrent sinus infections, your shower head. That biofilms grow in shower heads. And the amount of bacteria coming out of the shower can be 100-fold. That's not 100%. That's 100-fold greater than the amount of bacteria on the in the pipe coming up to the shower head. 100-fold. So you take a shower, and if there's biofilm and bacteria thriving in there, then you get washed with millions and millions of bacteria in the water.
Unbelievable.
When I learned about this, I'm in a lot of hotels. So I always now, I reach in and turn the water on and then just get out of there for 30 seconds or so, just to make sure that any of these hotel shower heads, if they have biofilms, I'm not getting bathed in all of this bacteria that just starts squirting out of there.
There's another element to this I'd love to add, which is then clear the pipes. Obviously, don't huff bacteria, right? But then the other side of that is so many of us live in neighborhoods that have chlorinated water that if you keep steaming chlorine into your sinuses, you will also disrupt the good bacteria that are supposed to be in there. Right. And so I have a whole house water filter, so we get clean steam. And so at least it's clean there. And then we'll spray eucalyptus oil, really pure eucalyptus oil in the hot shower and just breathe that. Or, as a kid with sinus infections, we just, put a pot of boiling water, put eucalyptus leaves in there and just breathe. Right. It has a natural antibiotic and viral and some antifungal effects that'll just clean out the aberrant colonies that are creating biofilm in there. And then think about what needs to be there, though. Like, this isn't a sterile pipe. So if you want to keep nuking it, then something's going to keep landing there. Yeah. So really having a healthy gut flora is what will inform your nasal flora over time. So it's just a matter of bringing balance to your gut. This will clear over some time.
Right. Agreed. Fully agreed. Organic produce is great at farmers market, but what about the other 10 months of the year?
It's tough. Whole food. I mean, we grow food. I'm in Southern California, but our new house in Deer Valley, I'm not growing anything, man. Right? It's like snow on the ground. And so, there's a Whole Foods, there's a natural market. I get what's there seasonally, right?
Right.
And you do what you got to do, right? It's not a perfect world, but whatever you can get organic, get it. And you know what? Almonds also come in organic, right? It's just there's a lot of things that you can get that are, kind of year round that you get in, kind of good, clean vessels, right? Some of the stuff gets transported in plastic and that's a whole other issue. Yeah. But, get what you can organic, do your best. That's all we can do in this world, really. It's tough.
You go to your local produce store and you ask for the produce manager or the store manager and say, "Hi, did you have organic broccoli?" And they'll say, "No, we don't." You say, "Well, why not?" And then you have your neighbors go in and ask, "Hi, do you have organic peppers?" "Why not?" And if one or two people do it, the store manager thinks you're a nuisance. But when 30 to 50 people a week do it, if you say it, they will carry it. If you build it, they will come. If you ask for it, it will come, because stores are about making profit. They're always about making profit. So if there is a demand and, it's a nuisance and you may feel awkward asking for this, but it's the numbers that make the difference. If you ask and then you talk to your neighbors, or you have a campaign where you target a store and everybody's going to go to that store and ask for organic produce, and you do that week after week, eventually, these people will get the message and they'll put their toe in the water. They'll get organic carrots, they'll get organic tomatoes and see what happens to them. They throw them out, or do people buy them? So it may be a baby step process to get the kind of sourcing for the food you want, but you can do it. You can do it without question. You can do it. Gabriella says, Dr. Pedram and Dr. Tom, thanks so much for the attention to my question. I really appreciated it. Blessings from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Welcome. Fiona says, hi, Pedram, watching from Mexico. Hi, Dr. Tom, watching from Mexico. Hi, Fiona.
Hello, Fiona.
Much. Dawn, who asked the question about being paleo and constipated, says, I eat more veggies than protein. You're on the right track.
Yep.
Make sure to get more root vegetables in there with that.
And so on that note, Don, is some people are just incredibly deficient in their ability to produce hydrochloric acid to help break down some of the proteins. And so there are a lot of factors there, but like you might eat less protein, but your body just can't break it down well. And if it doesn't, then it putrefies, and then it grows bacteria that thrive on putrid meat that also just, their exudate is just not good. It leads to pro-inflammatory substance. So there's an answer for you, and some of it might be in some testing, some of it might be, and we're just working with a good functional medicine doctor, but you'll find the right balance to keep the pipes moving. But right now there's something still off in that balance, and I encourage you to keep digging.
In my book, the Autoimmune Fix, I give the handouts that talk about the symptom patterns related to poor hydrochloric acid production. These symptom patterns related to poor pancreatic enzyme production. These symptom patterns related to poor gallbladder secretion of bile. So you can differentiate, well, I've got this, no, not that, yes, yes, yes. Oh my gosh, look at all these. And then you know that it's likely you need more pancreatic enzymes or you need more hydrochloric acid, which is an epidemic in our culture today of deficiency of hydrochloric acid. Amal asks a question, are butyrates a product of bacteria or virus? What is the role of butyrates in the microbiome?
Butyrates are kind of one of the hottest topics out there, frankly. The butyrates are predominantly from bacteria, from my understanding, and I want to be careful to say that I'm not the expert in this. My understanding is predominantly from the right bacterial colonies, and these butyrates will help with all kinds of processes that are happening in our body that bring down inflammation. The research in butyrates is not, everyone's like, oh, butyrate's the new thing. Like, I'm just going to go to GNC and buy butyrate and then all my problems are solved. It's a little bit more complicated than that. I think we've gotten to the kind of the first rung of saying, look, we found some really interesting data there, and we know that there are certain pathways for butyrates that we really like. I think that there still needs to be more work in that arena, and that work's being done in labs across the country. It's really, this is new science.
Right. Butyrates are also called butyric acid. They're a short chain fatty acid, and Mrs. Patient, you have an entire new body every 7 years. Every cell in your body regenerates. The fastest growing cells are the inside lining of your gut. And the fuel for the inside lining of your gut to reproduce itself is butyrate or butyric acid. When you don't have enough butyrate or butyric acid available, you're still going to rebuild new cells, but now you build your house out of straw instead of brick. Just Google butyrate, B-U-T-Y-R-A-T-E, and colon cancer. And you see many, many studies on the role of butyrate, adequate amounts, preventing the development of abnormal cells that lead down the road to colon cancer. So butyrate's the raw material to make the new cells in your gut. It's the raw material to make the new cells in your epithelial lining of your gut. It's the raw material to make new cells in the epithelial lining of your lungs, of your brain. Butyrate, butyric acid, heals B4. If you read my book, You Can Fix Your Brain, B4 stands for a breach of the blood-brain barrier, leaky brain. Butyrate not only heals leaky gut, it heals leaky brain. So as Pedram is saying, there are many, many new arenas that are being identified for these short chain fatty acids and for butyrate and the benefits that it brings to us. It's part of the big picture. It's not a shotgun that you do by itself. So how do you get enough butyrate? How do you get your body to make more butyrate? It's the action of the probiotics in your gut on the root fibers that you eat, the vegetable fibers. That's how you get more butyrate. So
thank you. That is by far, I mean, everyone's like, well, there's cal butyrate, there's mag butyrate, like which butyrate? It's just like, oh my God, just eat vegetables, right? And by doing so, the body's intelligence knows, right? Like there are all kinds of output that comes from the different bacteria eating different vegetables and different types of fiber. And we just don't understand the complexity yet. We understand butyrates are cool, but we just don't understand the balance, right? We don't know exactly.
Right. Good. Let's see. Nicole says, hi guys, what supplements do the two of you take every day?
Depends on the day for me. You know, I will adjust a lot of my supplements based on what's going on in my life. Right now, I'm taking Chris Shade's liposomal vitamin C and glutathione, and
Mojo.
I'm not taking Mojo right now. I think I need to get some. Yeah, I need to get some. And that's frankly it. That's all I'm taking right now. Oh no, I am taking an experimental strain, not experimental. There's a very specific strain, I'm not even going to mention it, that's been isolated in people. They've given it to mice with obesity and they've lost weight. And so there's a biochemist whose name will go unmentioned, who has finally managed to isolate the strain that works in humans. And he sent me a batch to test. And I was like, yeah, I could drop 10 pounds. Let's go. So that's the only other thing I'm taking. And I want to, I will report back. This is personal science, right? Like I'm not recommending this for everyone, but I trust this guy's a very good scientist. And the fact that he's isolated this is hopefully, miraculous.
And it was 2012. I read this article of a Chinese researcher came to the US to get his PhD and was working really hard and successful at what he was doing. And he put on 40 pounds. And so you see a picture of this guy, and here he is with his wife and his two young kids, a young researcher, and he's pretty porky, and then he remembered what his grandmother used to say about keeping your weight stable. And so he started eating 2 root vegetables every day, just included these 2 root vegetables. And then you see a picture of him a year and a half later, he's lost 40 pounds. Actually 45 pounds, I think he lost. And what are the root vegetables? Chinese yams and bitter melon. And he just ate a little bit of those every day. And what did it do? It changed his microbiome, because obesity for the vast majority of people is strongly modulated. That's a really geek term, but it means has its hands on the steering wheel. And if you're driving down the road and you have your hands on the steering wheel and you just turn like this, within a mile, you're way off course, right? So the bacteria modulate what happens in your gut and what happens in your body. So just turning a little bit, you can't tell. There's no really big difference until you're a mile down the road, until a week or a month or a year later, when you've got just a little imbalance in your colony. So what did he do? He brought some balance back by doing bitter melon and Chinese yams.
You know what's funny is now that I'm taking this probiotic, last night I just wanted salad for dinner, and today I just kept wanting vegetables. And so the bacteria tell you what to go get and eat. So it's both ways, meet in the middle, right? Eat the foods that support the bacteria, and then you start eating salads, you start craving salads.
Right. The
bacteria, like, well, me up, right?
Bacteria send out chemical messengers that say, feed me. And they don't send out chemical messengers that say, feed me with the wrong food. They tell you what they want. So what you're saying with the probiotics you're taking now is an experiment. You're just wanting to eat salads and more vegetables.
Yeah. Now, isn't that funny, right? But they tell you what to want. And then that also goes to this huge, I don't think we have time to get into this, but the gut-brain axis and how much these bacteria actually influence our decisions.
Oh, yes.
right back to kind of the philosophical things that we talked about earlier. It's like, how much are you actually in the driver's seat? So what you're eating will feed the bacteria that call the shots. So if you keep eating sugars and processed fats and crappy food, you're feeding the bacteria that then allow you to keep making those decisions and actually ask you to do so.
Yeah.
Right. They will puppeteer you.
Lori asked, do you have recipes for those 5 types of fermented foods? Lori, our friend, Suzanne, what's Suzanne's last name? Bennett. Yeah, thank you. Suzanne Bennett just came out with her new book, The Kimchi Diet. And I wrote a forward to that book. It's an excellent little book on how to make your own kimchi. So I'd recommend you pick that up. You'll really like it. We
have a fermentation guide with Interconnected as well, with like 15 of them. It's not that hard.
Yeah, nice.
It's really not that hard. If I could do it, anyone could do it. I'm kind of sloppy and I suck at I just chop the vegetables and it's worked. Right? It's not that hard. A couple questions that came through this other chat. Is this the series from last year's? I already bought it. Yes, absolutely. So Manuela, this is a re-release of last year's. So thank you for joining us. And this is to share with the people who missed it. So if anyone in your life needs to hear this message, share the free screening with them. It's a 9-day deal and then it goes away again. So if someone's complaining about their health, send them this way instead of trying to preach to them. And then Elizabeth saying, I signed up to watch, I can't get the link. Sometimes that happens for people who unsubscribed previously, Elizabeth. Send me, however I got this, I don't even know how this got here, but if you could just send your email through, I'll send it to my customer support team. Make sure you have a link to see it.
And the last question here, will there be an Interconnected 2.0 in the future?
Great question. The thing is, since I stopped filming and editing, the science just kept moving, right? That's how science works. And so we're doing a series, we'll be filming Dr. Tom for it next month sometime, called Exhausted, which is all about chronic fatigue. I got 3 or 4 series coming, but we're doing a feature-length film called Biome, which is very similar in topic, fixing the microbiomes of about 3 or 4 people and showing how it's done. So it's this work keeps continuing, right? It'll keep morphing and continuing. And then people on our list in Interconnected are getting updates all the time on research that's coming out. There's just so much happening in this field that, this is just the beginning, right? It's in 5 years from now, I can't even imagine. I have a pretty good imagination. I can't even imagine what we're going to know and the implications of it. That's how fast it's going.
Yeah. And it's work like what you're doing and what you've done with Interconnected that's accelerating the knowledge base, because more people are learning about this. We have med schools now that want to show this to all the students so that they're starting their education in health with this as a base of understanding. I think that is so cool. All right, everyone.
That's hallelujah. That's hallelujah time right there, right? Like we've finally gotten there, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. So if you've not registered yet for Interconnected, the link is there for you. Please register. Watch as many of them as you want to. Don't watch them if you don't want to, but support the project. At least register so Pedram knows you're out there, and numbers tell the story, right? So, and then share this link today with your family and friends. Send this over. Please like this one today and share it with your family and friends to listen so that they can then register for Interconnected.
Starts in less than an hour.
Yeah. So with all of that, Pedram, thank you so much, my friend. Thanks for all the work you do, and thank you for sharing it with all of us.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. Great hanging out with you and Marzi, who's hiding in the background there. Great to see you, Marzi.
You want to come say hello? No.
No. She's like, it's 2 in the morning.
It's 2 a.m. He says, no. All right, everyone. We'll see you next week. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.